Everyone has something to share, and either wisdom, story, or logic. And it's clearly amazing to hear all the differing missing links discovered by people, unique to their own journeys, and in how they have come to discover them. Together, we can help to build a bigger picture for a better future, for a brighter tomorrow. Let's stand united. Let's remove the veils, and let's create a new world together. Are you that missing link? Join Jesse Hale on the Missing Link Talk Show as he helps to unveil the mystery through the unique wisdom and store of others. Only on Real Revolution.
Welcome everybody here to the Missing Link. Here we are so excited to have Derrick Broze from the Conscious Resistance Network here with us to chat. How are you today, brother?
Sorry. I'm doing very well, man. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.
No, it's the honor is definitely ours. Why don't you maybe start off with telling us a little bit about yourself and, kind of your journey, how, you got to where you are, helping and educating the world.
Sure. Thank you for that opportunity. So, as you said, my name is Derrick Broze. I'm 36 years old. Actually, I just turned 37, just realized. Just turned 37 last week. And I'm originally from Houston, Texas in the U.S., and I now live in Mexico. I've been living here for almost 2 years. And I've been, for the last 12 years, working as an activist and as a journalist, doing a variety of different forms of activism, from helping build community, activist groups, doing protesting, doing gardening at community, volunteering, community farms, urban farms, helping confront politicians, doing the whole gamut of things, and started to focus about 2012 on writing and doing journalism, realizing that there was a huge lack of credible journalism in Houston, where I was from. And I had some experiences as an activist showing me that the local media, even not just the national media, but the local media, was corrupt in the way that they were reporting their stories about some of the activism we were doing. And so that encouraged me to dive in and just start doing it myself. And in 2012, I started working in the independent alternative media, getting paid to write articles, and that has evolved over time to become a full-time gig for me. I also have been hosting a radio show in Houston called Freethinker Radio since 2011, and we still broadcast on the FM radio on 90.1 in Houston. And I started writing books in 2015. I've published 6 books so far, and also working on documentary films, and have released about a dozen documentary films, from more kind of like mini docs that are 12, 15, 20 minutes long to full length productions. And I'm currently working on a 16-part documentary series called The Pyramid of Power. And I regularly release articles at thelastamericanvagabond.com, and then I release my own video reports at theconsciousresistance.com. And I could say one more thing, and then on that, you might have heard this story or maybe not, but I do like to let folks know when I'm sharing my story of how I got into this, that, what I just shared is all valuable and important, but it mainly relates to, of course, my activism, my journalism. But my work is, as I mentioned, called The Conscious Resistance, and that is simply just focusing on the intersection of freedom, self-governance, bodily autonomy, the intersection between those philosophical concepts and the search for spiritual meaning, like the deeper search for meaning. And for me, these are sort of two sides of the same coin. It's, a same struggle. And that's basically helping people recognize that it is important to confront the physical institutions of power, to expose and confront these crimes and criminals doing dirty, nasty things in our world. But also a big part of our journey, I believe, and my work promotes, is that struggle against your own internal tyrant, your doubts, fears, insecurities, limiting beliefs and things of that sort. So that's what we focus on with the Conscious Resistance. And the reason I included that, one of the reasons I include that, is because that's sort of out of my own direct life experience. When I was 20 years old, I got addicted to crystal meth, and I went to prison, and that was where I discovered meditation. That's where I discovered a lot of the practices that have changed my life. And that was well before I ever woke up to politics or the government or conspiracies or any of that kind of stuff. That happened first in 2005. And then I got out of prison in 2008. And it was that experience and that time and really meditation, and that began my healing journey, my introspective journey, looking at a lot of the roots of my trauma. So fast forward to 2009, 2010, I start reading some books, watching documentaries, and, I started to wake up, as we say. But for me, that spiritual search happened first. And I think it needed to happen first. So I had to go through this deeply traumatic, kind of intense time, learn all these lessons. And then I started waking up to like the physical nature of things. And that began my activism. But in 2013, that phrase, the conscious resistance, came to me. And that's when I realized that these are two parts of the same struggle, if you will.
So now, besides the meditation, was there, other things part of that helped you with your awakening? Did you learn about kind of what was going on in the system that kind of helped you kind of guide your path?
Yeah, obviously, as I said, meditation was a big, I think even more than meditation, like the other practice that I picked up and started regularly doing while I was in prison is simply just journaling, just making time. I mean, to me, that's part of that meditative practice, right? Just making time to sit alone with my thoughts and really process the things that I was going through, and really didn't know much about, I guess, that inner journey. I mean, I think before I got arrested and went to prison, I was like 18, 19, 20 years old. And I was experimenting with drugs and tried things like mushrooms and, psychedelics, and was sort of open to the idea of like, wow, there's something out there, there's a deeper purpose, deeper meaning for me. But I hadn't really, like, to get kind of, I guess you could say. It was just more sort of aimlessly milling about. And then when I got locked up, journaling was just the first thing. As even before I started meditating, I was like, okay, I don't know if folks have had the experience of really feeling completely powerless, like a situation where it doesn't matter how much you cry or scream or complain or call mom, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. It doesn't change the situation. You have to live it. You have to sit there. And that's something that we experience, I think, out here to some extent. But when you're in a cage, when you're in a box, even, that you have that. Plus, no matter what you do, you're not leaving this place. There's nobody that's going to let you go home. You're not going to have any more freedom. You're going to have to keep showering around other men. You're going to have to keep having no privacy and waking up when people, like, the whole thing. That feeling of just having to accept that was a huge weight. But also, I think it was a huge part of my liberation, of just accepting, like, all right, I'm here. I'm looking at the calendar. I'm not going to go home for at least a year, the earliest. And I can either sit here and be angry, or I can choose to make use of that time. And I just really started journaling, like, every day, like writing down my thoughts. And it was interesting because I even noticed, like, over time, my handwriting got more and more precise. Just, because I guess out here in the free world, as we call it, when you're locked up, call this place the free world. Things are going so fast. You're so busy, and, chaotic lifestyles, that even for me, it's like hard for me to slow down and write with my own hand without, like, writing all chicken scratch, because my mind's thinking so fast. But while I was locked up, I noticed, like, my handwriting was getting more slow, more still, more precise, as I was getting, like, kind of more, like, I was letting go of that fast pace from out there and finding the space within prison. So journaling, meditation, and yeah, I mean, when I think that those experiences alone helped me when I got out, because when I got out, I'd gotten sober of all the stuff I'd been doing. And in that time, it felt like this cloud had been lifted off me, not only a cloud of depression, cloud of drugs, and I'd gotten kind of clear-headed from all that, but it felt like for the first time in my young life, and I was 23 at this time, I was able to enjoy a sunset. I mean, I remember consciously the first time thinking, like, wow, like, I feel happy. I feel good about life. I think I just went through this crazy experience, but I feel good about whatever's coming. And it took me 23 years of my life to get to that point, to be able to say something positive about myself, to be able to, like, even be in that mindset, to be able to be open to what was going on. I often tell people that whenever I share this story, that, if you had come to me, Jesse, and say, like, let's imagine I was still going through that, and you would come to me and say, hey, have you heard about these different things going on in the world? Have you heard about this situation and the Great Reset or whatever? I would listen. I'm an open-minded person. I would be open-minded, but I wouldn't been able to do anything about it, right? Because, like a lot of our brothers and sisters in the world, they're suffering from different levels and types of trauma. And what I realize is that, trauma and healing from it, it's a lifelong journey. But still, if you're in the midst of your emotional trauma and muck and lost in that, it's a lot harder to care about what's going on in the world, much less what's going on with you. Like, if you don't even feel good about yourself, if you suicidal, as I was, depressed, going through a lot of that stuff from things that had happened to me as a young child, if you had come to me and said this, I would have been concerned, like, wow, I can't believe that's happening. But I was just trying to make it through another day, right? And so it's become so important for me to emphasize that need for that healing aspect, as well as, the journalism and the other aspects, getting people to pay attention to what's happening in the world, but to recognize that it is an internal thing as much as it is an external.
Yeah, and that's, really important for what you're saying is, people want to know, well, how do I change the world? What can I do? It does start with, doing the inner work and changing your own circumstances around, and then in turn helps change the world around us. So speaking about being locked up, kind of on a worldwide scale, what do you think is going on right now to us? Because, a lot of people kind of have this fake illusion that, we are free, even though, we are, but the system seems to want to keep us, kind of in these cages and dictating what we can and can't do.
That's a big, I think, lesson for a lot of us right now. I was sort of joking there that whenever you're locked in prison, you refer to this place, the outside world, as the free world. And I've been kind of joking lately, like maybe we should rethink that if this is the free world, right? Because, maybe it's the freer world, slightly freer than the physical prisons people find themselves in. But I do think it is a big lesson and a big challenge for us right now that our species is really trying to understand on an individual level, and as well as like a subconscious kind of bigger picture level of, do we value freedom? Do we value liberty anymore? Is that something we still hold on to, we still aspire to? And I think many of us are saying, yes, this is something we aspire to maintain and even expand and broaden into the future for the coming generations. And how far can we take this freedom thing, right? I think that is a situation I know myself and probably folks in your audience feel like we're dealing with and contending with right now. And then there's others who maybe don't see that same struggle happening. They are perhaps content with what's happening right now, and perhaps content with people like maybe those on this audience who question things, being locked in their homes or losing their jobs or being mandated to take shots or whatever the case may be, right? There's a lot of really precarious situations that are in our face right now. And on my better days, I tend to believe that what we're facing is something that we've collectively, subconsciously manifested in order to challenge us to rise to the occasion. I fully believe that this is the reason I'm alive in this time, to be alive here, to influence it, and to help empower and guide my friends and family, and empower anybody else I can. That's what I try to do a lot with my work, particularly with trying to motivate people to think ahead and think of the coming generations, and not to be bombarded by their fears of the present moment, or their uncertainty of what comes next and this and that, but instead to think in terms of like, what do you need to do to provide for your friends and family into the future, to make sure that they are safe, that you can continue to thrive into the future. Like, that's where my mindset has been, right? And if those of us who are paying attention are not comfortable with the direction things are going, maybe in your local community, your state, your province, your nation in general, then it's time to think, to answer those questions. How are you going to continue to provide for your family? How are you going to continue to feed them in the face of what we're facing? If they say you can't go into the grocery store, if they say you can't work here without a job, right? Like, these are real questions that people are having to answer now. People are making big moves. I mean, I hope people understand this, that where I'm at in Mexico, I mean, we've just seen a huge flood of Canadians leaving over the last month or two as they realized that things were going to get tighter for them. They flooded into the Cancun area and now have spread through the country looking for land, people trying to buy land, because Mexico is one of only 3 or maybe 2 countries now that there's no tests, no quarantine, no shot requirements to enter. And so my point with saying that is, like, right now people are really thinking about that long-term picture. I spent 2 months in September and October traveling around the United States and doing a tour called the Activation Tour, and having these conversations with folks and asking them to think about this in a concrete, practical way. And the people who are, I think, most highly individually motivated, I can see them taking concrete steps. These are people who have used our website, freedomcells.org, the Freedom Cell Network, to find other people. And now they're saying, hey, we pulled our kids out of school together. We bought some land together. We're growing food together. We're going out and we're protesting together. They're doing whatever mode of action feels right for them and their communities, but they're finding each other through these networks and these tools that we've been putting out there, and that, myself and others have been promoting for years. And the ones who really feel like, hey, it's time for me to get organized. It's time for me to really think, how am I going to take care of myself and my family? I need to get a little bit of food storage. I need to make sure I'm not dependent on these current systems that are trying to, coerce us into taking the jab, for example. People who are thinking in those terms and who are pushing past that discomfort, pushing fear of the people who are them and their families and their children and grandchildren in the future are going to thrive because they are thinking long term right now. The people who are caught up in what's happening right now and can't see past the present moment, or are able to see past the present moment but are allowing their fear to keep them from doing anything, are going to face much more difficult times. And personally, I want to be in a position where I can be proactive and help not only my family, my close loved ones, but extend a helping hand to other people who are coming along who I know will need help into the near future. I think that's, again, I feel like that is for those of us who choose it. This is a choice we have. For those of us who choose it, we have the opportunity to step up to the plate and shape so much of the direction of humanity right now. We can see that these other folks, what I tend to refer to as the predator class, they have their great reset vision. They have their vision of what they would like the next 10 years and beyond to look like. And either you're going to come up with your own vision and work to manifest that, to bring that to life, or you will be swept up in somebody else's vision that is working diligently night and day to try to bring their vision to life. And I believe it's up to us now, those who can see what's happening, to consciously manifest the future that we want. It's just going to take time, energy, etc.
So I'm in Canada, and we know a lot of people that have gone to Mexico as well. Right now, they've made a mandate or whatever that nobody can board a plane or a train anymore in Canada without the injection. So it's making it a little bit more difficult. We've had Dr. Daryl Wolf, a good friend of ours. He's in Ixtapa now, creating a training place and for people to go. Sasha Stone, he's gone to Mexico. He's got a place in there which he's creating, a place for people to go. So a lot of people are going to Mexico, but we heard that, they're thinking of implementing a track and trace in Mexico. Have you heard about anything like that?
No. In what specific way do you mean?
I'm not sure, but they just said it's, run a lot by the cartels, and they're, they say Mexico is kind of free right now, but they're trying to implement where they track and trace every single Mexican, inside of Mexico.
No, I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, I've written articles for the Last American Vagabond. I mean, I've tried to do more Latin American work since I've been down here and have been getting my work translated to Spanish. So I've been keeping up with Mexican news particularly. And I did do a few articles talking about there are a few different programs that are being talked about that are sort of at the beginning stages, because folks who have never been here might not be aware, but one of the benefits of Mexico is that Mexico is behind in terms of technology. That most of the places in the country outside of, say, Mexico City and major cities anywhere in the world do not have cameras on every corner, do not have facial recognition. They don't have highly integrated, interconnected digital systems, to check things. So, for example, hypothetically, let's say somebody wanted to get a fake PCR test so they could travel home to Canada or to the US without having to actually do it. In Mexico, the systems are not as connected, so hypothetically, it's not that difficult to fool those systems because they're not as integrated, they're not as digital. So there's a lot of those benefits, but at the same time, the richest Mexican is a man named Carlos Slim, who is friends with Bill Gates, and he owns part of the New York Times, and he has been one of the people pushing the shots out here, saying he's going to fund them for the people and this and that. And so there's people like him. There's a few other characters. One of the states, Guadalajara, recently is partnering with, I want to say the World Bank or some internationalist organization to start doing a kind of proto-digital currency locally, just kind of getting people, I guess, comfortable with that sort of system. So you can see it trying to creep in on the edges, but at the moment there isn't any. I mean, even if they tried to pass something like that, which they did try to pass last year, for example, the same way they do it in the US and Canada and anywhere else, they say, oh, well, the cartel is using anonymous. In Mexico, for example, you can go in and buy SIM cards for phones. You don't have to show ID or anything. So you can have phones without your name attached to it. It's pretty easy to put a fake name, things like that. So they'll say, well, the cartel's doing that, and then they're getting these phones and they're kidnapping people, or they're trying to get ransom or whatever, they're doing crimes with these anonymous phones. So we need to stop that. And there was a law that was proposed as a way to stop that, which would have every person buying a phone have to register some form of biometrics like thumb scan or retinal scan or something. But it put it was actually, the law said that the telecoms would have to be the ones to do it, to enforce this. And so it's been beaten down, and the Supreme Court ruled they couldn't do it. And so there, you see attempts like that to bring it in. But again, this I think one of the reasons many of us feel is that it would take 10 years or more to even get some of the US, especially because, like, for example, I'm in Tepoztlan right now, which is like a small town with a lot of international people. People love this area, but it's up in the mountains. It's like there's no cell service here in this area, right? Even though it's a popular destination for people. There's just whole pockets of the country like that where it would take a lot of effort and infrastructure, brand new infrastructure around the country to try to implement something like that.
I used to live in Mexico about 20 years ago, and so I kind of am familiar with it. So when you mentioned the Great Reset, there's also the Great Awakening. What do you think is, tipping the scales? Are people more, kind of looking to adopt the Great Reset, or is this the Great Awakening where, that we now finally can break free from these people that want to, keep control over other people?
So I think that, as I mentioned, I've been doing this for 12 years now. I started waking up in late 2009, 2010, and I've never seen more people asking questions than I have now. In that 12-year period, there's more people now than I've ever seen. And I mean, even like on an international level, right? Because the internet has allowed many of us to connect and do podcasts and, get to know each other and share each other's work and all that important stuff. But I think one of the most important aspects of it has been to help connect people internationally, to help us realize that we're not alone. You're up in Canada, I'm in Mexico. We got brothers and sisters fighting in Australia and India, across Europe, across Mexico. It's just, there's so many people, and we've been able to connect and sometimes break down language barriers because of the tool that is the internet and even some aspects of social media. And I think it's just helped people realize that these problems truly are worldwide, global, international problems. And I'll say again about Mexico, just as one example, a couple of months ago, there was groups that have been launched around the country called Mexicans for Truth. And it's pretty new. It's just started over the summer because generally Mexico has handled COVID fairly easy compared to other countries. There's been some places where they shut down the beaches or this or that. But for the most part, it hasn't really affected my life where we live. So despite that, though, there are Mexicans and expats and foreigners who are here who see what's happening. And as I was just mentioning, see that there's attempts to bring some of this stuff into Mexico. And we kind of feel like, since Mexico is behind, there's an opportunity to help build that awareness and that consciousness in the people so that they can push back against these things before they get as far as the US or Canada or, Australia. These kinds of things, right? So that's been really beautiful to see. And I think that is just one example. As those groups start to pop up in different parts of the country now, they're starting to organize some of the first protests. And just like anything, they're starting small because, again, most of the Mexican people aren't facing what they're facing in Austria or Australia or Germany, right? It's a totally different situation. So sometimes when things are comfortable, it's hard to tell people, hey, things are going to get bad. You need to think about it ahead of time. They only think about it when it's in their face, as we saw with the US and Canada. So there are attempts right now to cultivate that. And I think that's really what is the most exciting part to me about this, as you put it, the Great Awakening. I think it's been ongoing probably since any of us have been doing this, definitely since before I was involved in this. There's been people waking up, but it feels like the pace at which people are waking up is happening, more often. And I think it takes big things like COVID. Again, people have to have their comfort challenged. Otherwise, people feel like, well, I've got Netflix, I've got food in the fridge, I've got AC, I've got, 1,000 TV channels. Like, I feel pretty comfortable. Sure, there's crazy people out there, but I feel comfortable right now. And then COVID happens, and all of a sudden people are like, oh my God, what am I going to do? People start getting motivated through the fear of what's happening to actually take their lives into their own hands. And so for me, it's been a beautiful thing to see. I'm thankful that this is actually happening. Again, I feel like this is what we're supposed to live through, because it was getting a little bit exhausting to try to wake people up beforehand and have them not listening. Now they're ready to listen, right? More people than ever. Like, you're right, I see what's happening. So in that regard, it's been really cool. And I think this is just going to be par for the course, that the more they push, the more people will question, the more people will wake up. And maybe that's just what needs to happen, for us to get to that point where we can have critical mass. Some people say, well, we only need 3% or we only need 10%. We don't, whatever. Who knows even where we're at? But clearly there's a lot more people asking questions. And one thing I'll add to that too is that in terms of the expression of this awakening of humanity, one of the projects I'm involved in is the Greater Reset, thegreaterreset.org for anybody who wants to check it out. And this is an event that myself and my partners with the Freedom Cell Network, we launched earlier this year, January 2021. And we've done 2 events so far, or 3 events, one in January, one in April, and one in May. And our third Greater Reset, what we're calling integration, is coming up January 26th to the 30th. This is a complete event to watch. If you're wherever you're at in the world, you can tune in and watch for 5 days, 5 different themes. We have just some of the most powerful speakers that are people who are well known and others who are not well known, but who are doing really great work, and exclusively focused on solutions. This isn't a COVID conference. This isn't a debate conspiracies conference or any of those things. It's also not a stick your head in the sand and conference and act like this stuff isn't happening. What it is an acknowledgement that we're facing some tough times, and that more than ever we need to focus on solutions. We need local communities everywhere of all languages and all people to be organizing and getting connected, or organizing local groups, what we call freedom cells, and building independence in their communities. And I'm just thankful to say, again, because of COVID, the Freedom Cell Network online on our website, we probably had 2,000 to 3,000 people before COVID. Now it's grown to over 29,000 people from around the world. That's just on the website. And then probably 10,000 plus via decentralized Telegram groups that have popped up all over the world and are kind of inspired by the idea and doing their own things, collaborating together, but working independently as well. And that's just what we're involved. There's obviously other groups that people probably know about that I haven't even been, tuned into yet. There's just so much of this happening. And again, it happened because of COVID, because people finally got motivated to, I actually do need to grow food. Before people realized, yeah, I probably, should learn to grow food. It's a nice, quaint idea. And I guess it'll give me some food independence, but I can always count on my grocery store, right? That'll always be there. And now more and more people are thinking about supply chain issues. People are hearing about places like France where you can't go into the grocery store without showing proof of the shot, right? And people are thinking, like, maybe I should. So to me, all of these negative things, these quote unquote negative things, are helping push people towards a more self-motivated, empowered, decentralized, and localized way of living and organizing. And I think ultimately that's what has to happen. So, the Greater Reset is just one example of that great awakening. So again, the website is thegreaterreset.org. And I just want to invite anybody, if you are in the States or, can get to the States, there is an in-person event in Texas, in Central Texas, going on where there'll be 100 people there. And we're doing another event in Mexico as well. So it'll be the same event, some speakers in Mexico, some speakers in Texas, some speakers online. You can come in person, you can watch for free online. And we also encourage people to organize local community watch parties and to start, pick a day, or all 5 days if you can do it, but pick a day that seems like it'll reflect and empower your community the most. Invite people locally, maybe host it at a public venue where you can have all kinds of people show up and watch the talks and discuss them and see how you as a community can get organized and start collaborating and supporting each other. I mean, that's what we're really focused on. I think that to me is the most exciting thing of all this is, okay, cool, people are waking up and questioning things, but that's not enough. I mean, to me, I've been telling folks now for the last 6 months that knowing things are bad is no longer good enough. Like, if it ever was good enough, I think we really need to come to a place where we're being proactive and taking real, concrete, tangible steps in our lives if we want to continue to thrive into the future. And again, that's steps that are both like, hey, plant some food as well as work on healing your wounds.
So when you call it the Greater Reset, do you get any issues with it being, close to the Great Reset? People think that, it's maybe tied in, or is it something that you guys want to do to hijack their movement and to make it the Greater Reset to now this is better than what they're doing and this is the movement that we want to do?
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are people, I think, who maybe read too fast and are like, wait, this is the Great Reset. Screw those guys. I don't want to, and then they don't look and it's like, oh, here's Robert F. Kennedy. Here's James Corbett. Here's, we're doing a little bit different. But yeah, definitely so the original conversations that this whole thing came out of was last October 2020. And myself and one of my colleagues, John Bush at the Freedom Cell Network, we were just talking about this, like, hey, the Davos class, the World Economic Forum, the people behind the Great Reset that launched that initiative in June 2020, they meet every January in Davos, Switzerland. They've been meeting since the 70s, I want to say. And they were going to be meeting again in January of this year, 2021. And their theme was the Great Reset. First, they published the book in June, and then they were going to get together and discuss this. And the more we thought about it, I know that for me as a journalist, I'm probably going to end up watching a lot of their videos so that I can write articles to report about what they're talking about and sharing that with the audience. But that didn't feel like enough. We were sitting here thinking like, I don't want to just spend a week obsessing over these people and, oh, listen to what they said. Did you hear this thing that, what can we do instead that's going to be more empowering instead of just watching them for a week? And so the plan was that we launched the Greater Reset the same week as their event. So they had 5 days of talks and we had 5 days of talks. That was like the original thing, is we were trying to mirror and kind of counter what they're doing too, right? They want to talk about sustainability, diversity, inclusivity. They use a lot of these buzzwords that they don't really mean, but it's just a way to get people to kind of buy into their programs. They're talking about how do we redesign technology? How do we redesign education, the food system, et cetera? And so we were thinking, well, let's do that same thing. And they want to talk about it from this centralized, top-down, technocratic perspective. Like, hey, we'll get the smartest technological elite together. We'll make decisions for the rest of the folks. That's like their vision. We wanted to say, how does the people, like, because the alternative name is the Greater Reset or the People's Reset. So how do we as the people want to reset things and remake things, right? Because the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, and some of these other organizations, they call what we are at the very beginning of here, 2021 going into 2022, they're calling this the decade of transformation. People are probably familiar with the term Agenda 2030. Their plans are very much about 2030 and beyond, right? So again, we're in the middle of that. And our goal is to say, look, what does our decade of transformation look like? Because the reality is that one thing that these people have, right, is that the world systems are broken. What they don't tell us, though, is that they're the ones who broke them and or designed them this way. So then they can come back and say, hey, we're here to save the day. Let us, remake things. So we recognize that the systems, the economic system, the financial system, the food production system, the food distribution system, these are all unsustainable. They are failing the people. They're failing the planet. They're failing the animals. We can do better. So that's one thing they do have right. Of course, where we differ, obviously, is that we promote values of individual liberty, bodily autonomy, privacy. So our 5 different themes talk about liberating your body, mind, and soul. How to create a parallel economy and parallel, everything. Like I'm going to be talking about how to create new job markets for people who are being fired and who are looking for help, who don't want to get the jab, but still have skills and things to offer, right? How do we build that? The 3rd day is about permaculture and food independence. The 4th day is about taking back our technology. How do we use digital tools, but without supporting Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, et cetera, right? And then the 5th day is called building free and conscious communities. And it's going to be practical steps. As I said, our theme this year is integration. So more than ever, our speakers are going to be doing like hands-on practical ideas on how to move your money out of the banks, how to build a garden, how to, these different tools, how to take care of your spirit, your mind, your body. So yeah, we're directly trying to counter what they are doing for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love the idea and definitely got my full support. So it sounds like these people, kind of use the Freemason model, order out of chaos, in order they create the problems in order to come in as the swooping saviors to fix it and be the knights in shining armor.
That's 100% what it is. That is 100% what it is. Yeah, and that's what I mean, where like they use the terms that might catch the attention of certain people by saying, we need a more sustainable world. We need a more inclusive world. We need a more diverse world. Things that many of us probably agree with, right? But their way of using these terms is not what most of us think. And they definitely, it's not like, yeah, so in order to remake the food supply, we need more local food production. No, their thing is we need more corporate conglomerates, farming. We need like the Bill Gates of the world to buy up the farmland. And they have a different vision. And the other thing, one last thing I'll say on this is it's important to remember that the people behind the Great Reset, some of these same institutions pushing this message, are the same people behind the green revolution of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which brought you such great hits as pesticides like glyphosate and monocropping and GMOs and terminate, all the things that many of us are trying to get away from that have harmed a lot of the food supply, especially in the US where GMOs have kind of taken over. Places like Europe, they don't have as much of an issue as that, but Monsanto, Bayer, they own a lot of the US. So those same people who brought us those initiatives are now saying, hey, we're here to do another one. It's called the Great Reset, or we're going to reset the food supply. And these are all terminology that coming from the Rockefeller Foundation, the World Economic Forum, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, It's important to know about those things, but ultimately for me, what matters is you don't need to know the minutia and all the details. It's in my articles and other people's investigations if you want to. What you do need to know and focus on is that we need more localization, independence, decentralization in terms of power, in terms of food, in terms of economy. And the other thing is, this can be overwhelming, I think, to some people to imagine that, wow, we're going to have to remake everything, or we're going to have to get out of their systems, or what does that look like? And a lot of it, we don't know yet, right? I mean, that's sort of the beauty and the kind of scary aspect of it is it's unknown, right? We have to create it, because I do believe if we don't take these efforts right now, then the ones coming after us, my 6 nieces and nephews that are all 12 and younger, and their eventual children and grandchildren will be the ones that have to deal with the worst of it because we chose not to act. So even if we don't know what exactly we're building or what the next stage looks like, we can recognize what we don't want. We can understand the principles that we do value, and then we can focus on creating a world that values and holds those principles dear.
What's your thoughts on BlackRock and Vanguard? If you know those two companies, then it's a little bit of research. They own all 4 pharmaceutical companies that are pushing these jabs.
Yeah, they're definitely up there. They're at the top, or at least pretty high up there. That their names have become more and more familiar to people. I think Blackstone, BlackRock, Vanguard, etc. And I actually just did a piece on this push towards the metaverse, and the latest initiative that the Great Reset folks are pushing is called the Great Narrative. Now they're recognizing they need to control the narrative, which means they need to try to shape the way we're thinking. And some of that involves their ideas of pushing the world towards the metaverse, this sort of digital, augmented, virtual reality. And that's like a whole big other topic. But when I was doing that research, one of the main people who I found that is involved in that is this woman named Peggy Johnson, who is a former CEO of Microsoft and now currently the CEO of another company called Magic Leap. She also sits on the board of directors of BlackRock, right? So, I mean, it's just, as I was investigating this one aspect of it, it's like, wow, I've got Microsoft, Rockefellers, Gates, BlackRock, like all tied in through this one person. And yeah, they're definitely one of the names of these institutions which are amassing a lot of power and a lot of influence in land and real estate and things of that sort. And as you said, they've got a big stake in companies like Moderna and others.
Yeah, all 4 vax companies, they've each one have got 20 or 30% of each. Between the two, that's 40, and they all 4 different ones, from a little bit of research that we found, that they own all 4. So not only is there no competition when they produce all the same thing, but we know how nefarious that these injections are for people, and it's all being run by the same companies. To not even produce any kind of a different product kind of makes it a little bit scary. So what's your thoughts on the metaverse?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. There's a part of me, and I didn't include this in the article, but there's a part of me that is this. So, I mean, I'm a child of the 90s, right? I remember going to the arcades, and I remember going to like the first attempts at virtual reality arcades, right? And I remember it was like this big giant room you went into. It was totally black, and you had to put on this huge headset, right? And people are just walking around with the headsets, and I'm sure it didn't look like anything fancy, but it was just like, wow, I can see another world through the goggles, and you're like shooting at each other. It's something that I feel like that idea of augmented reality, which augmented reality is different from virtual reality. It's like, imagine wearing Google Glass or some sort of headset, and you can see the world around you, but it's augmented with a heads-up display that maybe tells you the time up here. So you're just kind of like the movie, what was it, Minority Report with Tom Cruise, where you're just kind of playing with stuff that's not here, right? You're seeing things, and I can see a lot of very useful examples of this technology. I can see a lot of fun examples of this technology, and maybe in a different world with different people, it might be something that I could really enjoy. But as I wrote in my 2-part investigation, I'm also extremely skeptical because, again, like the names you mentioned, the players that are involved with this, right? It's not like we have benevolent people pushing this idea. I'm actually right now reading a book called Snow Crash, which is a sci-fi book that was published in 1992, and it's the first book to actually coin the term metaverse. The guy who wrote its name is Neil Stephenson, and he's actually now consulting the companies that are trying to help bring his metaverse to life. And it's this vision or this idea that via augmented reality and virtual reality, we could have digital avatars, representations of ourselves, and you could look like whatever you want, or from whatever time period you want, and you could just have this whole other life in this. In some ways it's like a video game. Maybe some people are already plugged in that way, but it's even more immersive, right? It's like you could walk around in this world. You could buy real estate there. You could, the whole thing. And yeah, unfortunately, I can see, as I wrote in my article, that this is going to be used to spread propaganda. I mean, I'm sure it's not before long before they tell people, there's no viruses in the metaverse. There's no climate change in the metaverse. It's better for the planet if you just stay in the metaverse, right? Because you're not actually living and breathing out here. You're not damaging the planet. I could see, trends like that start, especially if they really focus on, they're not focused so much on you and I. They're focused on the very young ones, getting them to be kind of comfortable with this, which is, putting phones in their face. Might do that when you do it at a very early age. They get used to staring at screens, being a part of that world. And again, just like with video games, but to a whole new extent, I could see people almost giving up their physical life in order to, prefer to be in the metaverse at some point. And I also do think that there's not going to be just one metaverse, as we're calling it now, and who knows what it'll be called in the long term. Like, it might be a thing where nobody really calls the internet the World Wide Web, too much anymore. But at the beginning, that's all there was, the WWW, the World Wide Web, right? Well, maybe metaverse is going to go out of style soon enough once it becomes the multi-metaverse, right? Where there's not just one place you go to, but then companies start having their own competing versions of realities that you can pop in and out of at different times. And you end up with a large portion of the population not really paying attention to what's happening out here in the real world. Whether that means corruption of politics or what they are doing to the planet, because everybody's like, oh, who cares, man? I'm having fun in the metaverse. I don't really care what they do to the planet out here. Again, I could see some really interesting use cases of this, but I also can see some really scary aspects of it. And I think it does come down to choice. People should be given the choice of what they want. I think it'll just depend on, as the Great Reset, the Great Narrative agenda plays out, it does seem, they use the term Fourth Industrial Revolution, that the metaverse is a big part of that, trying to push people not only into smart cities, but trying to push people further into this type of technological, technocratic, and in some ways transhumanist world. So I think it's just, people are going to have to make their decisions. What kind of lives do they want to live going into the future?
The movie Ready Player One, I just watched a couple days ago for the first time, which kind of, and I think that was from 2018 or 2019, kind of is a prelude to what this is, kind of, predictive programming or helping people in that. And then as well as the thing called Minecraft, it seems like Minecraft is a lot of prelude to this, where people are building their own worlds and then watching people play, and it's taking people out of their own world and putting them into this digital world that's kind of helping people along in this path.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. I haven't read or seen Ready Player One yet, but I have a younger brother who's really into that book, and he told me the same thing when I was telling him about the metaverse. He's like, "Oh, it's like Ready Player One." I'm like, "Okay, so yeah, there's already this ideas out there." And yeah, and definitely video games are a precursor to this in some ways, and it's hard to know, right? I mean, I find it odd to be in this place as I get older, right? Because as somebody who played video games and listened to heavy metal music when I was younger, I would have hated the idea of anybody saying like, oh, this music's influencing you in these negative ways, or this video games are going to make you, all the things of like, oh, video games make people a killer, or, music can turn some, I don't know that I buy into that idea per se, but clearly what we put in our brain matters, and it influences us in different ways. And even though I listened to some pretty crazy music at a young age and heard all kinds of cuss words and was exposed to things that maybe I shouldn't have, I turned out fine, right? It's hard to know, like, what's going to expose somebody to something and maybe set them on a path where they, like you said, maybe they become addicted to Minecraft and Fortnite and these kinds of things. And then they are, the metaverse, they jump right in, they never come out, and maybe you could have averted that by not giving them so many hours playing, Fortnite or whatever. I don't know. I think it really does come down to the individual. But like I was mentioning with the younger ones, I think it'll be very different though because I grew up playing video games and I had a life before the internet. But if you're growing up where you literally live on the internet, like a lot of the younger generation, where they're just from birth got a cell phone in their hand, starting to TikTok or whatever at a very young age, or at least watching those things, like they're already a product of the internet. And the next stage is if they put their mind in there, then I mean, who knows where that could go, right?
What's your thoughts on cryptocurrency?
I've been getting paid in crypto off and on since 2012. I started learning about crypto in 2011, and then as a journalist, started going to like the Texas Bitcoin conference and some other events, and really trying to navigate and understand the space, because obviously it was like this really new, exciting thing, and I was just like, how do I even, you have to learn about it to be able to even report on it to understand it, right? So I was going to a lot of events, and some of my first article gigs in 2013 were paid with crypto. And at the time, I needed money to pay rent, so I never really held on to it. I just would cash out and go pay rent or whatever bills I had to pay. But I got comfortable with the idea of using it. Now, I've also written some articles, one particularly that's called Is There a Chance to Unite the Pro and Anti-Blockchain Crowd? Something along that. And trying to do an objective look of like, here's the really scary crypto blockchain, really scary digital currency and blockchain projects, because there is a difference between digital currency and cryptocurrency. Crypto does imply privacy, it does imply decentralization, non-state currency, whereas like governments, central bank digital currencies, they're launching their own digital currencies. There is a difference, but they're using similar technology in blockchains, digital ledgers. So I've benefited from it. I've definitely have gained some value and been able to turn that into real world money and buy things. I'm down here in Mexico in the process of finding land, and a good chunk of my money is going to be from crypto earnings. It's going to go straight into buying land so I can grow my own food and do good things, right? So in that regard, I see a benefit. I see a value. I haven't used a bank since 2008. I don't use or deal with banks or any of that, and crypto is a part of that. And at the same time, I can also look at some of the projects that are out there and see some really scary things. The idea of putting retinal scanning on the blockchain, the idea of putting like all life on the blockchain could both be, again, good or bad, depending on who's the brains behind it, who's the ones, what the intentions are. That's the thing is blockchain, crypto, these are all tools. And like any tool, whether digital or physical, the intention behind that tool matters, right? So the crypto could be used to allow private exchanges. For example, here in Mexico and even parts of South Asia, there are people who have gotten into playing video games and earning cryptocurrency or earning tokens through those games that then they can cash out and have real world money that they would have had without. And that to me is like, wow, that's really cool, right? You start building a local economy. Some of the younger ones train others, and before you know it, these folks are able to play a game or trade in crypto or whatever it may be, particularly in their situation, and gain value that wouldn't have been there, like without a bank. I mean, that's amazing. That's the best case scenario. Now, of course, there are people in the crypto space who want regulation, who want government involvement, and they're pushing ideas like that. We need to have KYC, retina scan, thumbprint, or ID in order to exchange crypto. I very much try to use crypto in a private, non-KYC, peer-to-peer exchange method as much as possible. That is, to me, the truest expression of it. But again, I see others who are less principled, let's say, in the crypto space, who couldn't care about privacy, who just want it to be another stock or something they invest in. They don't really see the true value of money outside of the government's hands. And that was the original intention of a lot of people in the crypto space. So unfortunately, in some ways, it has been co-opted. That space has been co-opted with people who want government regulation, who want to end private usage, but there still are a lot of people trying to come up with those tools. And I think like in general with digital technology, we're sort of in this digital arms race between those who value privacy and those who are trying to erase privacy, right? There's going to be people who are creating new encryption. There's going to be people who are trying to crack that encryption. Maybe some of those people work for private institutions or they work for governments. But every time they create something to crack something, there'll be somebody trying to create a new, stronger, layer of encryption or a new tool. And I think that might just be par for the course for the moment, that there's going to be different ways to interact. And that's why, I mentioned with the Greater Reset, we have a day dedicated to take back our tech, because we want to talk about digital tools in a responsible way and say, hey, look, email, for example, is inherently insecure. You can try to use some better emails, but it's just not a good thing if you're really trying to be private. So what can you use, right? And how do you get your phone without having Apple and Google in it? Like these kinds of conversation, like let's use the digital tools to the extent that we can and for the good we can get out of them, but let's not hand over our lives and our privacy in the process, right? And I try to take that approach with crypto or any other digital tool.
Do you like the, like the black phone and things like apps like Signal, where they say that these things are supposed to be more, kind of, hidden and not, being able to be spied on?
I don't know the black phone specifically. I might have come across it, but I tend to use the above phone, which is Ramiro Romani. He's involved with the Greater Reset. His website is abovephone.com, and he sells phones that have been de-Googled and stripped of all the Google spyware and everything and hardware, and he up sells them up loaded with decentralized and open source privacy apps for so everything that people are used to using. It's like already uploaded, and they kind of help people transition. So I've been testing and practicing with that. And then when it comes to Signal, honestly, I don't really trust Signal. For one, I never like that Signal auto notifies the people that are in your contact list when you join. To me, that kind of defeats the purpose. Like, I don't want every random person who has my phone number, hey man, I saw you're on Signal. So I never like that. But there's also a researcher, journalist named Yasha Levine that I recommend everybody checking out. He wrote a book called Surveillance Valley. That is just the deepest dive and most credible research I've seen into exposing Silicon Valley and their connection to the intelligence community and the Department of Defense. And that goes for Facebook. It goes for most of the major companies. It goes for the internet itself. But he definitely draws some interesting connections between the team behind Signal and the people they're connected to. That doesn't mean the protocol they use doesn't work or anything like that, but things worth looking into. But I would say in terms of messaging apps, I prefer Session and status.im, because neither of those require a phone number or an email or anything like that. You can sign up completely anonymously. Status actually uses what they call chat keys. So if you're similar with like a crypto wallet, how you have like a key, random set of letters and numbers, it's a similar thing. You have a QR code or a key, and that's the only way somebody can find you. Is if I was like, hey, here's my key, you scan me, now we're connected. And again, there's no names, emails, addresses. It actually generates a random set of 4 letters or 4 words that usually include some kind of animal and an adjective or two, and you pick from those, and then you can send people who you want to connect with your chat keys. But I do think that ultimately, if you're looking for privacy and you feel like you're concerned about sending something digitally, then I wouldn't do it, right? Because I don't know that we can 100% trust any of these tools.
How do you think that transhumanism plays into everything that's happening right now?
I think transhumanism is the sort of so technocracy is the political philosophy, right? A technocracy means rule by experts, rule by elite, scientific elite, technological elite, and it's been around for over 100 years now. A lot of people haven't been aware of it. I think maybe you never even heard of it until the last few years. I actually wrote a book called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which people can download for free at theconsciousresistance.com/how-to. But so technocracy is the political philosophy that guides a lot of these people. That's, again, the idea that democracy doesn't work because the people are too dumb. We shouldn't have people voting. And, well, instead of a monarchy and one single person, let's get a group of people, the experts. These are the Faucis, the Bill Gateses, the et cetera, those kinds of people they put in front of us and said, trust us, trust the science, trust the experts, right? So that's kind of the guiding political philosophy of the movement. But then there is a larger overarching philosophy, and that would be the transhumanist philosophy. And I think that we were just talking a moment ago about the metaverse and the great narrative and all that. I do think that's a big part of the push towards the metaverse, is to change or, in their terms, evolve what it means to be human. And again, like I support digital technology. I support individual bodily autonomy. If somebody wants to make themselves a cyborg, I think they should have the freedom to do so, right? But at the same time, we also have to consider the implications of the fact that a lot of these technocrats, they believe that they can be more than human. I think in my estimation, I think some of these people are afraid of death, and that's why they're into these concepts. They're afraid to die, and they're trying to think of whatever they can to preserve, to extend their life. Some of them have referred to death as a disease that needs to be cured. And I don't know, to me, there's just something that doesn't seem right about that, right? I mean, again, do whatever you want, augment yourself. If you can live longer, then maybe you are maybe you're going to accomplish more than me in your time. But I personally am okay with being human and the limitations and the flaws of being human. And it seems like in their mind, it's more about how do we move beyond that? How do we erase that, right? And I do think at the heart of it, some of the folks, not everybody, of course, who's involved in the transhumanist movement, but the folks at the top level involved with the technocracy as well, that it is a very much an anti-human philosophy, that they want to, and many of these folks have talked about eugenics and the science of trying to create the perfect human and maybe evolve past these limitations and people who have certain traits or less than, or whatever the case may be. So I do think that not every person out there trying to augment their body or thinks about merging with machines is a bad person per se, but I do think that the folks pushing this from within this kind of milieu of the predator class definitely do not have positive intentions.
2022, Elon Musk says that he's finally going to do the Neuralink, where they're connecting people's brains into this reality, which is maybe the first start of this push. Do you think that he's, this technological genius, or is he a CIA plant like some people think? And right on his website, or his Wikipedia says he's an actor, So, what do you think about Musk and, what he's doing with this Neuralink?
So the Neuralink thing is pretty crazy. I do think it's inevitable that whether it's Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg or some of these people, that it's going to happen. Connecting their brain to machines I think it's just all been inevitable at this point. Unfortunately, again, there's enough people who would be down for something like that. And maybe it'll start with the richest folks like Musk and others. But ultimately, I think it will trickle down. I mean, again, back to the metaverse for a moment. Companies like Magic Leap, they've said that they admit that they've failed to make the metaverse and maybe things like Neuralink appealing to consumers because the headsets are clunky and they're not, they just, nobody wants to wear that thing all day and it makes you dizzy and whatever. So they're focused now on how to get enterprise, like private business. Like, okay, let's get augmented reality into businesses and into larger enterprises, and then we'll start bringing it into the consumer base. They might do a similar thing where they could pitch it to CEOs like, hey, once you're jacked in, your employees can receive your thoughts immediately, right? You can tell them the latest updates without having to call them, or however they're going to sell it. I mean, I would be concerned, again, like if you think about the track record of these types of people, it's not a very good one. I'm not sure why you would want to trust them to put anything directly in your brain. And then just with Musk himself, no, I don't know whether he's a genius or not. I'm not here to judge that. He seems to be a smart man at the least, but I know he's not what he claims to be. That even you can go back finding 10, 15 years ago, mainstream articles of Wired magazine and other press, like actually calling him out. He was sued by the original owners of Tesla. He didn't found Tesla. A lot of the things that people think about him that he created or built really weren't built by him. And at the same time, what I was mentioning a moment ago about technocracy, in my book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, when I was doing my research, I found that Elon Musk's great-grandfather was actually a member of the Canadian Social Credit Party back in 18-something, I can't remember the exact year. And his brothers also have ties to some of these things. So I don't think he was just plucked out of nowhere, to be in the position he is. I definitely think he is playing one role in the agenda. One role.
I know you got to get going. So last question here is, the people being injected, can they detox from what's going on? We see athletes dropping all over. We see airline pilots dropping all over. We hear some people are getting vial 1, which is just saline. Vial 2 is the mRNA. Vial 3, which is mRNA plus cancer. What's your thoughts about what's going into people, and can they detox if they've, made that poor decision of injecting it into them?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I know all the specifics, right, of like what people are going to get from which shot or what's going to happen to them. I've seen that info going around, though. I will say that I started investigating vaccines in 2014 in Houston, and that was around or right before the documentary Vax came out. And I ended up meeting Del Bigtree back then and just kind of getting connected to some of the parents who were doing this research and parents of injured children. Specifically, parents who were saying, yeah, this happened to my kid after they got their shot. And this is well before the COVID shots or any of this kind of stuff. And even back then, people were talking about detoxing from shots. I definitely have met families who said, my kid got the MMR vaccine and started to get injured afterwards, like totally changed, went from one day to the next, was totally different. And these parents found different regimens involving like remineralizing their child's bodies, like as well as detoxing and stuff. And some of them said it was like super rough. Like, they're having to take a lot of pills and different things a day for like months on end for up to a year. And I actually met one of these families' child, and he was 12-year-old, and he seemed like a normal 12-year-old, but they were basically saying like, this is one, total 360 turn, 180-degree turn from where he was before after detoxing. So I do think that is possible. I don't know like what that looks like or how. I'm not going to sit here and tell people what to take per se. I'm sure there's better people, other people better suited to that. But our bodies and our minds are beautiful. I'll kind of wrap things up with where I started talking about my own drug addiction, man. I put so many things up my nose and in my body that you'd be amazed that I'm sitting here having a conversation with you. Sometimes, I was amazed that I was able to put together sentences, right? But our bodies and our minds are so incredible and so capable of healing. And I fully believe that short of death, that we can, there's definitely things that we can detox from and overcome and make it through. So if people have unfortunately chosen to go that way and now they're looking for answers, I hope that they will see them, because there are answers out there, right? I think that our body definitely wants us to be living in a clean, healthy state. And sometimes we just got to take the steps to remove certain things. So thank you again for having me on today, Jesse. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for spending the time with us. And could you just want to tell everybody a little bit, maybe your website or how to connect with you? Just a last little final thought before we head out.
Yeah, thank you so much. So again, my main website, if you want to hear more about my bio and just, background, you can go to derrickbroze.com. But my journalism is always posted at theconsciousresistance.com. Documentaries, books, interviews, podcasts, news reports can all be found there. And I mentioned the Freedom Cell Network, freedomcells.org. If anybody wants to get plugged in, create a free account, try to find people locally, check out the member map and the cell maps, and you can find people within your area. And then again, thegreaterreset.org. If you want to check out the Greater Reset 3 integration in late January, we'd love to have you guys tuned in and supporting however you can.
Awesome. Thanks again so much. We look forward to having you back here on The Missing Link. It's love inspiring new knowledge, and you gave us a bunch of knowledge, and people appreciate it. We appreciate you, and thanks for everything that you do. God bless you, brother.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
Okay, that was awesome. So thanks for Derrick Broze being here with us. He said, he's going to come back again. So tomorrow we have 3 missing links. We've got Richard J. Short coming back for a second time at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Then we got Star Child, which is going to be interesting. I've never met him, just talked to him once. He's at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then we've got Aurora, coming, to us for the first time. We spoke to her on, one thing that I did earlier, maybe last year, and her name is Aurora. So, there'll be 3 missing links tomorrow, and that's at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you, everybody. Right now, we're blocked on our second YouTube channel. First YouTube channel got deleted. We're on our second YouTube channel. We just got our second strike, for, our interview. Today is our last day, I guess, of our Facebook not allowing to go live. We've had a 30-day Facebook ban from going lives on Facebook. So right now we're on our alternative channel, called the Forbidden History Chronicles that we do with Desert Owl. We haven't got any strikes on there. So, that's why we're going live here right now. But next week, when we do go, tomorrow will be our last day that we're not allowed to go live on Facebook. And then next week, when we have John Cerrucci, we'll be able to be on our Facebook Live on the 15th. And then we've got Kumara, we've got Annette, who was, another person that went through the Hollywood sex trafficking, right from an early age, and she's lived to tell about the story. And then we've got Raylene Short. So thanks again for all your likes, comments, shares. Love you all, and you're welcome, Patricia. You're welcome, Starlight, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Bye, everyone.